talking about dementia. So Dr. Tampi, tell us about dementia and where on the spectrum does Alzheimer's fall?
Well, dementia is the rubric of conditions that are present with worsening cognitive problems, that is memory being one of those cognitive problems with associated change in function and change in behavior. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia. There are other types of dementias like vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, fronto-temporal dementias, dementia associated with Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, and other neurodegenerative conditions. So when you talk about dementias, you're talking about not only cognitive problems, with memory being the most common, but also behaviors and also functional changes.
Okay. And Alzheimer's seemed to be the one that most people are afraid of. What percentage of the people with dementia would you say have Alzheimer's?
It is between 50 and 70% of patients with dementia. The most common cause is Alzheimer's disease.
Uh-huh. And what's the second most common?
In the United States,
Yes.
it is vascular dementia, but if you go to Southeast Asia, vascular dementia is the most common cause, followed by Alzheimer's disease, followed by other kinds of dementia like Lewy-body dementia, dementia with Parkinson's disease, and Huntington's disease.
Now you're saying Asia and Europe, Alzheimer's is not the number one.
In United States and Europe, Alzheimer's disease is the number one cause. But in Southeast Asia, where there are more higher vascular comorbidities, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, they have more number of vascular dementia patients than Alzheimer's disease.
I see. Dianne, at the Adler Center, what do you see most of?
At the Adler Center, we're actually not a terribly high-tech place. We really see people who present with problems in their care, and obviously one of the things we hope to do is to establish a diagnosis for them. But equally important is the case management function, which is really helping families to navigate their way through the maze of services that might be available for them in the community, care planning decisions that they might need to make, including how long can people remain at home, helping families to educate themselves so that they are prepared for what might come down the pike for them in terms of dealing with changes in mood and behavior and declining function. So it's really the care of the patient and the family together as a team, because they really are. The patients with Alzheimer's can't survive without care in the community, either from the families or from institutional care. So that we really see our main focus is meeting the patients and the families where they are and helping them with the care problems that they identify.
But you see people on the spectrum. You see
We do.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about, the doctor explained to us that there's a spectrum. We have a 1-minute video that gives a 3D explanation about Alzheimer's disease, and we're going to put that up on the screen for you. It's 1 minute, and it's called Alzheimer's disease 3D health animation. So we're going to watch that now, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Dementia is a chronic state of confusion in which the patient finds it hard to remember, learn, and communicate. It is also characterized by the formation of senile plaque involving the accumulation of beta amyloid and abnormal neurofibrillary tangles. Beta amyloid is derived from a larger molecule called amyloid precursor protein, or APP. APP is normally present on the cell surfaces, and the cleavage of APP results in the formation of beta amyloid. Neurofibrillary tangles consist of insoluble twisted fibers that are found inside the brain's cells. The tau protein is abnormal, and the microtubule structures collapse. Recent drugs like inhibitors of cerebral acetylcholine esterase have been shown to be of some benefit to Alzheimer's patients.
Okay, so that video, Dr. Tampi, tells us in 3D format what this is. Do you find that to be really sharp and helpful for the people?
If you look at the the pathology for the development of Alzheimer's disease, I think it is a good sort of schematic representation what actually happens with and why patients get the changes in the brain that they're supposed to get. Yes, neurofibrillary tangles and the senile plaques are the most common cause for why patients end up with the symptoms that they present with Alzheimer's disease.
I see. And so that gives people a really crisp, sharp idea that they can work with. Okay, now the next thing we want to talk about is this young onset of Alzheimer's. Now, I want to ask Wendy, because Wendy's mom has, well, your mom was diagnosed in her 60s, right?
Yes.
So you said before 65, that's considered early onset. Your mom was diagnosed at 67?
She was diagnosed at 67, and the symptoms really started to present themselves when she was 64, 65.
Ah, so would she classify as early onset at
Yes,
64?
but unfortunately, this is what happens with patients with dementia. Is the pathology and the symptomatology may start very ahead on, but people think it is part of normal aging.
Yes.
So you say, we'll help them out, and this is nothing wrong, and people are in denial with, the symptoms of the disease. So the actual diagnosis takes about 3 to 4 years from when the symptoms actually start.
So when she was diagnosed at 67, at 64, you're saying that she could have been.
Definitely. Looking back, it's easy now to say,
Yes,
oh,
in
well, those
hindsight.
strange circumstances or strange behaviors were really early signs of it.
What led you to taking her to get diagnosed? What were some of the things that you saw that made you uncomfortable?
Extreme, sharp changes in her personality and in
Give us an
her
example.
behavior. For example, interrupting people rudely, not being able to understand social cues, laughing at inappropriate jokes.
And she never did that before.
Exactly, very different for her. Additionally, with my mother's form of dementia, she had a lot of speech problems from the start. So she is now completely mute, but in the very beginning, she was not able to form words. So it was like an extreme form of stuttering almost. So her sentences would miss words, be lacking full, there wasn't a full sentence. She would, it wasn't so much as she was forgetting the word for something, she just wasn't able to actually speak. It was very scary.
And how long from the time when you noticed this, where she was behaving inappropriately, socially, how long did it take from that time to the time where she lost her speech?
Oh, let's see. She was diagnosed in 2006 and was mute as of the fall of '08. So 2 years. 2 years. Within 2 years, she had lost all ability to speak.
Now, Dr. Tampi, is that particularly a short span of time? Is that normal?
Well, Wendy's
for the fronto-temporal lobe?
Frontotemporal dementias, the type of frontotemporal dementia that you have, frontotemporal dementias used to be called as Pick's disease before.
Yes.
But only 25% of people with frontotemporal dementias do have, the Pick cells, which are cells in the brain, and of the frontotemporal dementias, there are 3 different varieties: the frontal variety, the temporal variety, and the primary progressive aphasia. Wendy's mom, because I treated her, she had a mixed type of dementia where she had a combination of all these three.
So you can have a mixed type,
Yes.
not just one thing. And do we know why some people have a mixed type and one just have a straight?
Well, it depends upon the pathology where it happens. In patients with Alzheimer's disease, the pathology is mainly in the temporal cortex, followed by the parietal cortex with the involvement of the frontal cortex later on. Whereas in patients with frontotemporal dementias, it is the other way around. The frontal cortex gets involved first, followed by the temporal cortex, and then, if possible, the parietal cortex. Usually what happens in the patients with dementia, as the dementia progresses, you will see that all the areas of the brain get involved. So in the end, all the dementias practically look the same.